While confirmation of a third Trump-nominated Supreme Court justice looks virtually certain, the impact on the 2020 election is a highly politicized question mark. We'll get one-on-one perspective from two men who come from very different partisan camps, but who share experience working in the Senate. We'll begin with David Brown, Democratic strategist, former majority counsel to Democratic Senator Patty Murray, on two congressional committees, and he is in Washington. Okay, let's get right to it, David. McConnell said he'll have a vote on the nominee. Will he have it before Election Day?
I think he's going to do everything he can to push it through before Election Day, because I think the stakes, Larry, are incredibly high and fraught for the Republicans if they wait until after the election when, if the polling is to be believed, Donald Trump will be a losing president and Senate Republicans will have lost their majority in the Senate. But the reality is this is a dangerous political calculus for the majority leader, because what he's really doing fundamentally is pushing through brute political force a nominee, whomever that person is, who is deeply unpopular with the American people. 60% of Americans, including nearly half of Republicans polled, want the next president, not this president, but the next president, to be the one who gets to decide who will replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. And so it's a deeply unpopular thing that Mitch McConnell's doing. And fundamentally, the stakes here are so high because any vote cast for Donald Trump's nominee is a vote to overturn the Affordable Care Act, and it's a vote to eliminate protections for pre-existing conditions at a time when we're in the middle of a pandemic and we've got over 200,000 Americans who have lost their lives. And so the stakes just couldn't be higher.
How about the thought in some circles that, Biden wins the election, the Democrats take control of the Senate, and they increase the Supreme Court to 12?
I mean, I've seen those arguments. I've seen a number of policy proposals about what we might do to reform the court and make it more equitable and ensure that it's truly representative of the American electorate in terms not of its decisions necessarily, but rather of the composition of who serves on the court. But I think that's table stakes down the road. Right now, what matters are the policy issues that are at stake. And we talked about the Affordable Care Act, but that's one of many issues on the docket, Larry. You've got LGBTQ rights, gay and lesbian Americans, bisexual, transgender Americans who are fearful that a far-right court would roll back protections. You have consumer rights. You have voting rights. You've got labor rights. You've got the Second Amendment. Republicans have already signaled that conservatives have signaled that they want to bring cases challenging the way in which the Second Amendment is interpreted to a newly conservative court next term. So all of these issues that just really get to the heart of the fabric of American life are at stake. And so from a policy perspective, that's what really matters right now. But if I were John Roberts, if I were the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court right now, I'd be looking at what Mitch McConnell's doing, weaponizing this nominee in this seat. And I'd be really concerned about what that means in terms of how the American people will regard the legitimacy and the integrity of the court and its decisions in the next term. So, I think questions of reform are fair questions to be asking.
What can Roberts do?
Not much, probably in his current role. I mean, I think he probably wants to stay as far away from this political dogfight as he possibly can.
We'll see turmoil, won't we? If Biden's elected and the Democrats take the Senate, wouldn't there be a calamity in America to demand that they vote now?
Yeah, it would be a calamity in that the American people will have spoken in November. They will have decided whether they want Joe Biden to be president or whether they want to reelect and give Donald Trump another 4 years. If the American people say we want Joe Biden as our president and we want Democrats to have the majority in the Senate, and Mitch McConnell, despite all of that, despite the outcome of the election, still pushes through a Republican nominee to the court, that will be the literal definition of a tyranny of the minority pushing through a decision despite what the majority of Americans want. I can't think of anything more undemocratic than that. And I think that if Mitch McConnell does that, it will not only tear at the heart and the fabric and the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, but it will do extraordinary damage to the institution of the Senate. I think Mitch McConnell might be one of the most cynical majority leaders ever in the history of the institution. He's already done extraordinary damage in the way that he's run the Senate. But if he does this, if he pushes this through after Joe Biden is elected and after after Democrats take over the Senate, I think that is just doing extraordinary injury to the Senate.
Okay, what do you know, if anything, about Judge Amy Coney Barrett?
So it's interesting because she's obviously at the top of the list, and she was also a front runner when now Justice Kavanaugh was nominated by Donald Trump. She is beloved on the right. She is an evangelicalist pick in that she passes almost all of their litmus tests. If you look at the course of her academic writings and as well as her jurisprudence, she's signaled very clearly that she thinks Roe v. Wade was an erroneous decision. It was wrongly decided. And I think it's fair to say that she would be a vote in favor of overturning Roe. She was highly critical of Chief Justice Roberts and the decision that upheld the Affordable Care Act. So I think it's also a fair conclusion to say that she would be a vote in favor of repealing the Affordable Care Act, repealing protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But she's also written over the course of her tenure in her academic life, as well as being a judge, she's also written about how she considers precedents that depart from originalism to be suspect, and perhaps even precedents that needn't be followed. That really strikes at the heart of stare decisis, meaning respect for precedent, which is something that senators often ask about because it's important whether or not a judge is going to follow what judges before her or him have written and concluded. If she's saying that anything's fair game that she doesn't agree with, that's extraordinarily dangerous, I think, for anyone on the Supreme Court. But it'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump picks her because she will be a highly contentious nominee. She was confirmed to her current circuit court seat on a party line vote. Well, that's not true. There were 4 Democrats, I think, 3 or 4 Democrats who voted for her, but both Tim Kaine and Joe Manchin have said they won't vote for her again this time because they disapprove of how McConnell is ramming through the nomination. But it will be a highly contentious vote and sure to divide rather than unite the country.
Funny thing about the court, in the past, Felix Frankfurter, a very, very liberal jurist, was appointed by Franklin Roosevelt and turned into one of the more conservative members of the court. Earl Warren, appointed by Eisenhower, former governor of California, turned into one of the more liberal. Can we always stamp the court?
No, and it's a really important point. You're right. Over the course of history, we've seen justices who have perhaps proven to be disappointments by the president and the party that nominated them. But I think what's at stake here, and the reason people feel so strongly about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat, I mean, Justice Ginsburg was a lioness of the left, and she, in many respects, really was at the vanguard of progressive thought and championing working people in this country and defending their constitutional rights. And so that's a sacred seat, I think, for many Americans when they look at who should occupy that seat. And so you're right, Larry, we can't always predict how a jurist will ultimately decide a case, nor should we be able to. But this is a special seat. And when 60% of the American people want Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump to wait and let the next president decide who should be nominated to that seat, that's a supermajority. That's enough to overcome a filibuster in the Senate. That is an overwhelming majority of Americans who believe this at a time when this country really can't unite about much. If 60% of Americans want us to wait, then I think we should listen to the supermajority, the will of the American people.
All right, David, in your gut, do you expect an election result November 3rd?
Oh, man. I've looked at all the modeling on this, and there are very few scenarios that actually get us, Larry, to an election result on November 3rd, really barring a blowout by former Vice President Biden, which, by the way, I think is possible. But barring a blowout, it's not entirely clear if we're going to know. And this is why what you're seeing President Trump do when he talks about mail-in voting, mail-in ballots, and he tries to stigmatize them, he tries to cast doubt preemptively on the legitimacy of voting by mail, which so many states do. My home state of Washington does, without any problem. He's really trying to lay a foundation for being able to challenge the election results on election night if he doesn't like the outcome. And, I think that we need to live by the principle in this country, abide by the principle that every vote should be counted. And if states are allowing people to submit their ballots by mail, as long as they're stamped on election day, they should be counted. So, Larry, whether or not we know the outcome on November 3rd, we darn well need to ensure, in my opinion, that every American vote that is lawfully cast, that those votes are counted.
So we could have a constitutional crisis.
Look, I mean, it's 2020. Literally everything has gone wrong this year. So I would be a fool to tell you that no, we couldn't. I sure as heck hope we don't, Larry. But we need to. I think we all need to appeal to our better angels here and hope that American democracy, which has survived for centuries now, can see through this election. And look, that's what I believe in the American people on this one. The American people are already voting in droves. People in early voting states, you're seeing record turnout because the American people know what is at stake in this election. It's a repudiation of an agenda for the past 4 years that has sought to divide this country rather than unite us. And so that's what people are voting on at the ballot box. They're voting on that. They're voting to summon a response to overcome this pandemic. People get what the stakes are, Larry. And so people are going to come out and vote, and I believe in the American experiment, and I darn well think that if Joe Biden is elected on November 3rd, he will be president, and Donald Trump needs to understand his place. He needs to respect his office enough to know that if he loses the race, he needs to bow out gracefully rather than try to contest it and draw it out in litigation that would only hurt the country.
Okay, David, give me your forecast for Election Day, Senate, and presidency.
All right, well, I think presidency, I'd probably telegraph that one. I think Joe Biden's going to win. It's looking good. He's leading in all the battleground states, those key polls. And when you compare where he was, even compared to former Secretary Clinton, where she was in 2016, Joe is ahead. And he's really, he's nearing that magic mark of 50%, which is where you want to be. It's an incredible place for him to be as the challenger. Donald Trump's tried to define this election. He's tried to define it in terms of socialism, law and order, all of these things that are failing because people are seeing through that. They're looking at his record and they're rejecting what Donald Trump is offering. So I think Joe Biden wins the presidency. In the Senate, the Cook Political Report is giving us Democrats giving us a pretty good shot at winning the Senate. When you look at senators like Susan Collins and Cory Gardner, two senators who are representing states that went for Hillary Clinton in 2016. They're both underwater. And now with this really unpopular Supreme Court vote, it's going to make their jobs even tougher. So when you take races like that, when you consider how well Mark Kelly is doing in Arizona, I think we've got a clear path to retaking the Senate in November.
David, thanks for your time today, as always.
Thank you, Larry. Good to see you. Be well.